And they're not just giving us spiritual teachings, they're challenging the way we see reality itself. Traditional Christianity, salvation is about faith in Jesus and obedience to God. But in Gnosticism, salvation comes through gnosis, a deep transformative knowledge of the divine. Think about the Gospel of Philip. It's not about performing rituals, but about what those rituals mean on a personal level. Marriage, baptism, communion aren't just rites, they're symbols of an inner journey, a spiritual marriage between your soul and spirit. It's a very internalized path, focused on awakening to a reality that goes beyond the physical. Speaking of Jesus and marriage, let's talk about Mary Magdalene. In mainstream Christianity, she's often reduced to a side character, but in Gnostic texts like the Gospel of Mary, she's front and center. Here, she's not just a follower, she's a teacher and a leader who reveals hidden knowledge. This emphasis on Mary and Sophia, the divine feminine figure in many Gnostic stories, brings a balance that mainstream Christianity lacks. Sophia's story, her fall and redemption, parallels the human journey. Emphasizing wisdom and compassion is central to spirituality. One of the most striking aspects is the Gnostic view of the material world as illusory. Mainstream Christianity generally sees the world as a good creation that we must live in righteously. In contrast, Gnostics see it as a prison, a distortion of divine reality. The Gospel of Truth describes the world as a place of ignorance and suffering, not by God's design, but by the demiurge. So rather than accepting the world as it is, Gnostics encourage us to see beyond it, to recognize it as a shadow, and to seek the true light beyond, similar to Plato's allegory of the cave. Many ancient Eastern spiritual traditions embrace the idea of a cycle of rebirth, a process through which souls are repeatedly reincarnated into the material world until they achieve enlightenment. In Gnosticism, much like in Hinduism and Buddhism, the soul is seen as trapped within the physical realm due to ignorance. The ultimate goal is not to perfect one's life in this world, but to transcend it entirely. This journey involves breaking free from the cycle of birth and death by attaining gnosis, this direct knowledge of divine reality. In Gnostic thought, this cycle of reincarnation is not a punishment, but a process of learning and purification. Souls must experience the material world, transcend ignorance, and overcome the illusions imposed by the demiurge. Once the soul attains true knowledge of its divine origin, it breaks free from this cycle, returning to the pleroma, the divine fullness. But within this duality, there's the archons, guardians of the material world. Lesser spiritual entities that serve the demiurge, acting as guardians and rulers of the material realm. Their primary role is to keep human souls trapped, obstructing any attempt of spiritual awakening. These beings are often depicted as embodiments of ignorance, desire, deception, forcing the illusion. They manipulate sensory experiences to keep souls focused on the external world and away from inner truth. The Gnostic texts suggest that the archons are responsible for many of the distractions and temptations that lead people away from the pursuit of gnosis, whether through societal norms, rigid ideologies, or personal fears. The archons influence human consciousness, reinforcing the dominance of the physical over the spiritual.